Hey guys, welcome back to Mavericks Arcade. My name is Chuck, and today we are going to be talking about raspberries. So, I originally had this raspberry for use as a multi-stream box. So I basically just had the OS running on it, running NGINX. And all it did was it allowed me to stream to it, and then it had it go and restream to other services. But it looks like the SD card on this thing died. So I'm going to rebuild it. However, there's a couple of other things that I want to do on the Raspberry Pi. So instead of going with this Raspberry 3B, I'm going to go with this 4B. And this model has 2 gigs of RAM, and this is what I was going to use. But then I realized I want to have the desktop environment just so that I can play around with it, have it look real nice, and it'll be better for making videos instead of always doing command line stuff. Plus I'm still learning a lot of the command line stuff, so I figured I'm going to go ahead and use this a little more powerful one. And then this is originally the one I was planning to use for the arcade 1-up. However, they released the 8 gig version, so I got one of those, and that's what we're going to use for the arcade 1-up. Now, the other reason why I'm doing this video, and there's tons of tutorials on how to install Ubuntu out there, is I figure there's going to be a couple of projects we're going to be working with this Raspberry Pi. And just because, some of the people have said that they like the way I describe things better, I figure I'll go ahead and do my own instructions. Now, again, this isn't the only way to do it. There's tons of ways to install these things, but this is just the way I'm going to do it. So let's go ahead to my desktop, and we're going to start by downloading what we need. All right, so for the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our SD card. Now, I used to run just 32 gigs, and that was perfectly fine. However, like I said, this Raspberry Pi that we are building right now is going to be for a lot of different uses. So I'm going to go ahead and use, getting older here, got to look at the small print. This looks like the stick I need. It's a 256 gig micro SD card. Oh no, that's the danger with these things. They're very, very easy to drop. So we got a little 256 gig micro SD card, and we got my little USB reader. Now, of course, in the other video with the arcade, I had put those boat ports on there, and since last time I recorded, I've actually put those boat ports on the back side of my desk, so I can easily plug in and remove USB devices without having to get up. I do need to find a way to be a little less lazy at times, but let's go ahead and plug this in, and then we're just going to have to check and make sure that we got it on the right computer. It looks like I plugged into the wrong one, so unplug that and plug this in here. So there's the drives. That's the 32 gig or the 256 gig stick showing up right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the website for Ubuntu for Raspberry Pi, which is just ubuntu.com/raspberry-pi. We're going to choose to get Ubuntu for the Raspberry Pi. And when you click on that, it takes you to this page. And the first thing we want to get is the Raspberry Pi Imager. And this is the utility that basically just lets you download the imager. And in my case, I'm choosing download for Windows. And when you do that page, it automatically downloads the image file. Now, I already downloaded this before. So once you've got that, then we're going to go back to this page or install Ubuntu. And we're going to look down here, and I'm downloading, at the time of this video, the latest full release is 2204.1 for 64-bit. So we are going to download it for the 64-bit model. And again, it'll automatically start downloading. All right, so right here we have our download files. And as stated in a previous video, we do not give administrative rights to our regular user accounts. That can easily lead to malware and other problems. So my accounts, I always have regular user privileges on the accounts that I use, and I'll get prompted for anything administrative, and I have to enter a password. This will really help protect you against malware. So if you're not doing that, switch to that best practice as soon as possible for your own sanity and protection. So These two files are the imaging files, and because we are not running as administrator, we want to go ahead and remove these files to a location that all the users can see very easily. I've already moved the image file, so let's just go ahead and move the other two files over to this temp area. Now, Imager is the one we just downloaded. That's the one for Raspberry Pi specifically. Rufus is a more generic use for everything tool that's open source and for imaging, and this is more useful when we're going to write to a USB. But again, we move the files because when we launch this, it's going to run as an administrator, and we need to make sure it's easy to find. So we're going to go ahead and launch Imager now. I'm going to put in my password. And it's saying, hey, welcome to the setup. So we're going to click install. Now this one's really fast, so that's good. We're going to go ahead and run it. And we're going to choose the operating system. Now, one thing that's nice about this tool is if you're doing it for a Raspberry Pi, you can actually have it automatically download some different configurations for the Raspberry Pi that are pretty standard, like just set up for a media player, just set up for general purpose OS, and this would download Raspbian. But we don't want Raspbian. Again, we're going to look for an Ubuntu install so we can do all kinds of custom things and have a desktop that I'm familiar with. And again, that's all a matter of choice, but in this, I like Ubuntu, so that's what we're going to show you. So use custom image file, and from the drive that we moved it to, it's right here, the 2204.1 pre-installed desktop for the Raspbian. And we are running it as 64-bit, so we're going to double click that, and we're going to choose that storage drive. And we're going to go ahead and choose write, and it's going to warn us, do you want to overwrite the disk? Of course we do. That's what we're doing. But we're just making sure, yes, that is the right one. We're going to hit yes. And luckily, because we're doing this on the computer, we got a little bit of magic we can do in this video. So we can go. And just like that, our install is done. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that stick out of the device, and we're going to go ahead and put it back in the Raspbian Raspberry Pi, and we're going to go ahead and begin that install. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove that USB device. I'm going to remove the little card, and I have a Raspberry 4 case here, and we're going to grab the Raspberry 4B 4 gig model. That open. And one thing you want to make sure of when you're using the Raspberry devices is that you're using an official Raspberry 4 power supply. Ding. Now, in that, so the one thing to be careful of is when you're putting this in the device that you make sure to line up the ports very carefully and just kind of set it in there. Now, if this was going to be doing a more intense workload, then I do have little kits that allow me to put little heat sinks on there, but I'm saving that for the more intense arcade stuff. So basically, these are really simple. You just lay it in there, and then you just put the case back in that spot, and then just click it on the side, and you're good to go. So you got your, yep, nice and firm. Now I have some Velcro here, and I also had a screw hole in the back because I had this mounted on wood before. But basically, when I'm done, I'm going to make sure to go ahead and label this, and it's going to be mounted on the wall in the back. But for now, one thing is these do not have standard, the 4s do not have standard USB or HDMI ports. They have these little adapters. Well, you have to buy them separately, be aware of that. But I'm using these little adapters to go to a larger scale HDMI. These are mini HDMI. So you have two little mini HDMIs. You got an audio output. You have a USB-C connector for the power. Now these can be supported by network power over Ethernet, so PoE. And it has two USB 3.0 ports, two USB 2.0 ports, and it's got wireless up to AC. So we're going to go ahead and plug all the connectors in here, or all the cables in. And then we're going to check out this window. and check out the install. Almost forgot the last step, which is to take the very, very tiny SD card and you put it so that the contacts face down on the back side. And you have to very carefully line it up to a very tiny slot in there. Just be careful not to let go and have it slip around inside the case. You got to make sure to land the card right in the grooves of that slot, or else you're going to run into some issues, like I am now. It may actually be easier to put the card in first. So it's right here on the back side of the board. And you put it so the contacts face the board, like so. Just want to be so gentle with it, you know? So it's got to be right there, pushed in. And now with that in place, I'll go ahead and make sure that the stick goes through the hole here in the back, right there, and that the ports line up. Gotta be so careful. All right, so everything's lined up. You can see the card poking its way a little bit out there. And now we'll put this back on. So also to interact with the device, you need obviously a keyboard and mouse. I have this handy dandy little remote keyboard from Micro Center. Not a sponsor, it's just useful to me. So we're gonna go ahead and plug that in. And we're gonna go ahead and power this thing up. So we'll see what happens with the device. All right, so we're gonna take a timeout right here. And again, as I discussed in the last video, I'm trying to continue this like look around the community and trying to get more involved with just general community members of the arcade enthusiast retro community. So I was checking around on YouTube, just browsing away, and I stumbled upon this channel, and it's really cool. It's about documentaries and stuff that he makes for classic arcade retro games and so forth. And right now, even as I'm browsing through the playlist of options, I see a couple where I just need to watch these. For example, the history of hard driving, or hard drive-in, sorry. I remember this game in the arcade. When I first saw it, I was like, whoa, because it had a clutch and it was a driving simulator. And I just remember like overshooting turns, launching my car upside down off a ramp, you know, indefinitely flying off until it finally hit the ground with this clunk. And, you know, you turn around and this little barn on top of a hill's got a weird looking blocky chicken on it. And I just thought at the time, of course, this was like amazing detail. And, you know, recognizing as a kid that, oh my God, it's factoring in traction on the road. You know, that was such a new concept to the video game. So really, really cool. I'm definitely going to check that one out. But the one I watched was the documentary, The History of Spy Hunter. And that was really cool to watch because it shows like how the game came to be, the inspirations behind it, information about the people that made the game, and then basically like all the various ports that this game, and there were some that I hadn't seen before. They're just horrendous. He does a really good job of stepping through each of those ports and describing their strengths and weaknesses. And definitely when you get a chance, check it out. The name of the channel is PitmanQC. And again, it's documentaries about, you know, classic arcade games. I did reach out to him get his permission, and he was more than happy to, you know, let me go ahead and kind of feature his channel on there. So if you get a chance, if you're not already subscribed, because he's got more than me, so you may already be subscribed, but if not, check it out and definitely consider subscribing to his channel. And of course, while you're at it, if you've not subscribed to this channel, please do so. Let me know what you think. Check it out. Give me back feedback in the comments below of what you think about the channel. Another one I highly recommend you check out, which was really interesting to me, was Zaxxon. He has one of them on there for Zaxxon. And it was really interesting. I had no clue, and I'd always wondered where the name Zaxxon came from. And if you want to find out, it's in his video, clear as day, why they named it that. So definitely check it out if you get a chance. Back to our video. So it looks like we have a troubleshooting opportunity. The device never came back up. It just stayed like a black screen. So I started to look on Google and I found this article, but I figured, you know what? One thing you guys said you do enjoy is actually getting to see me go through a troubleshooting process. Let's check this out together. Now, it is funny. Yes, I go to Google. Most of the stuff I look on Google. It's just I've had enough experience to kind of help me figure out which shortcuts to use. And that's really a big difference now. It's kind of like that Stargate where everybody had the computer on their head and everybody could access all the information. I can't imagine back in the day having to come up with all these solutions yourself on the fly. A little more difficult for people before the internet. Pay respect, let's move on. So the first thing we're going to do is take that card, disconnect the power from the Raspberry Pi and carefully remove that card. Again, make sure not to lose it inside the case. And I put it in my USB reader. So one thing that's nice is even though it's Linux, because it's formatted as FAT32, we can see the files from a Windows station. So I'm going to open up that config file, and I looked through here, and the only thing that I saw that's relevant here is it says if you have issues with audio, try uncommenting the following line that will force it into an HDMI output. We'll look into that if we need to, but for now we're going to go ahead and just close it because this is saying to change an overlay. But we're going to try this first solution here, which says we got to go into, well, I guess there is no boot folder on this one, so all right. Well, let's just do the second solution then and see if that fixes it. So under config, we're going to look down here for the overlay. And this says change VC4 KMS V3D to say VKMS or FKMS. So we're going to do FKMS right there. We'll hit save. The kernel's in control of the graphics memory with full KMS. We'll give this a shot. All right, we're going to again remove the little stick. I'm going to put it back into the Raspberry Pi very carefully. And then we're going to reconnect the power and see if we're good now. Cross fingers. Right, so we're going to connect that power in and hopefully have some better luck. And then we'll get the splash screen. We should at least get that. Yay, splash screen. And now we got to see if it goes any farther. Let's see. Come on, baby. Okay. It's better. We're getting some output now. And again, you're going to see me looking over to this side because that's where the screen is. I will have it set up better in the future for the Raspberry Pis where I can look in front of me instead of off to the side. But let's see. We're going to get through the boot here and see what it's prompting us for next. All right, so initially it's going to ask us for the language, which obviously in my case, I want English. So I'll hit continue on that. Using my little keyboard, I went for the wrong one. And there's a little mouse. I go ahead over here and hit continue. And now it's asking us for the keyboard layout. Just going to go with standard keyboard. And it's already showing New York, which is what I want. I'm nowhere near New York, but that is my time zone. So I'm going to go ahead and let that be the case. And now it's asking us for our name. We're going to put Such tiny little keys. This little keyboard. And then this machine, what am I gonna... This computer name will be Raspberry. It's funny, it shouldn't be a big issue, right? Let's call this one, because this is going to be used for the restream, which, in case you don't know, I do stream on Twitch on Maverick's Hideout. So if you have Amazon Prime and you're not using it, sign up for a free Twitch account, link your Amazon, give me your free subs. If you're not using them, it's $5 that you can give to me that you're not using anyway. So if you're paying for a Prime subscription and you're not using Twitch to give me free money,
Maverick needs stripper money.
You're wasting money. So anyway, back over here, we're going to call this one, we're just going to call it Rasp Pi. Four. Sounds good to me. Let's just do that. The username is going to be Maverick, and I'm going to put it in a really stupid password here. Just for the moment. Because once I have remote control and I have better access to change the password, then I'll change it. We're going to set this one to log in automatically. So we're going to go and move that there. And we'll go ahead and hit continue. Now, the newer version of Ubuntu actually allows you to use Windows Remote Desktop Protocol to communicate instead of having to use VNC. It's just a different way to remote communicate. And this is also the reason why I wanted to set up a desktop version of Ubuntu, is so I can get a nice graphical interface to configure it remotely instead of just using like an SSH command line, which is the secure shell way that Linux uses through the command line to remotely access the Linux box. I like to have the pretty graphical interface. So again, that's the reason why we picked, instead of using the version 3 of the Raspberry that I used to use, we're upgrading to a 4 with 4 gigs of RAM is to help support that desktop. So basically now we're just going to again use the magic to get through this install, and after we're finished, then we will try to set up that sharing. All right, here we go. So next, let's go ahead and set up that sharing. So as you can see, now we are back to the screen. Now, the reason why we're back here is because I chose to automatically log in. If you did not choose that option, then you would have to type in your login that you did from the previous screen, and then you would get to this point. But the reason why I'm using automatically login is this device is going to be sitting mounted in a back room with no keyboard, mouse, or anything connected to it. And for ease of use, I'm going to remote connect to it using remote desktop protocol. So that's the reason why mine automatically logs in. Now you can see it's immediately asking me, hey, there are some updates available. Do you want to do those now? And I'm going to say no for the moment. So I'm going to say, remind me later. And it's asking for the rest of the initial setup. Now, this is if you had like a subscription, you could have it automatically, or you can connect your Google accounts and things like that. I'm not going to try to do too many of those accounts on this box. I want it to kind of remain as information free as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and hit skip. Now it's talking about live patch. Now you can have it automatically go and get the patches, but you have to have a subscription model to have it automatically apply. So I'm going to go ahead and just skip past that and say next. And then do you want to improve Ubuntu by submitting stuff? I always say no to that, even though I should be a nice member of the community and say yes, but no, I say no. Hit next. Privacy. Do you want location services turned on? No, I do not. I know where I am. So I'm going to leave that one disabled. And unlike Windows, this is disabled by default, not enabled, or at least suggesting that you should by default. So we're going to go ahead and hit done. And now we have this desktop. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here by the networking icon. We're going to hit the little drop down and we're going to go into settings. We're then going to go down to sharing. And again, this device does have wireless, but in my case, I'm looking for the lowest latency possible. So it will be hardwired on my network. So we do not need that mode turned on. So again, for this box, I'm planning to use it for restreaming, which is highly latency sensitive. I'm going to be using it for multiple things. And I'm also going to be using it for another project for home automation coming up that you'll see in the future. But for the restreaming thing, again, Maverick's Hideout on Twitch. This is also going to be used that my daughter, when she's playing and we're playing a game together, her machine will stream to the box where I can pick it up on my stream, so I can have her stream included with mine. So good times. This is asking me to create a keyring password. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Again, these passwords I will change later when I have more ease of access from my main desktop, because I have an encrypted password program to store my passwords. So right now I'll put a simple one in there. And what we're looking for initially is remote desktop. So we're going to first turn on sharing, and then we're going to go to this remote desktop session. Now again, by default, it used to be a VNC, but they've now adopted the remote desktop protocol and prefer that one because it actually offers more encryption functionality. So we're going to turn on this one, get annoyed at people dinging me, and then we're going to choose to enable the option for remote control. So we've got that. Now, this by default is an encrypted password. Again, I'm going to change and make it stupid simple for the beginning, just so that I can get into it remotely and then try to adjust it going afterwards. I will also change this host name, or on my network, I'll make sure that that host name is reachable. But for now, this is all we need to do. And then what we're going to try to do is check what my IP address is by coming over here. Eventually on my network, I will make sure that my routers or my DHCP server that gives out IP addresses, I'll make sure that this device always gets the same IP inside my network. One, so I can easily identify its network traffic, but two, so it doesn't change on me so that I can easily remote connect to it. So we're going to look at the wired connection, and we're going to look at those wired settings. I'm now going down over to the connected one, and I'm going to hit the gear on that. And again, we are just looking at this IP address. So I'm now going to take this IP address and try to access from my main machine. So we now have the machine back here. I had a little bit of a recording issue. So there is a prompt that you'll see that won't show up here. And that is when you hit connect initially with the IP that we had from the previous step, we're going to change and use a different account. This will be the credentials that we had typed into that remote connection part. Now, normally what would happen is right here, it would say, there's a certificate issue. Do you wish to trust this certificate? And you would check yes, and you would choose to always set it, always trust the certificate. So there's a little checkbox to say always trust, and then you hit yes. And then we're here. And all you have to do from here is then go change those passwords. We're going to click on activities though, and we're going to choose update. We're going to go ahead and run those updates that it was talking about. So basically, just run all those updates, reset your passwords, the ones that you're comfortable with. And then the last thing is we're going, because this device doesn't actually have a monitor on it, I'm going to go into the settings and choose the power saving modes to always be on. Don't try to save, don't go into standby, nothing like that. Just always run. So we're going to look for power. And we're going to say, never blink the screen. Never. And yeah, there's no standby mode. It's just, we're never going to blink the screen. So we close that out. It's now saying, hey, do you want to install updates? So again, just install these updates whenever they appear. So basically that's the install. That is the basis that we're going to use for the Arcade 1UP project. That's the basis I'm using for this restream functionality, and also for a home automation thing I'm working on. So figured since this is going to be the base for all three of those, that I might as well make a video and share with you guys my way of going about the install. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you have a question about an issue that you need assistance with, please email me at mavericksarcade@gmail.com and I can try to assist. And again, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.